So next panel will be complexity and risks and game supplier integration strategies for success with Alexander Tomic, founder of Alea. Sir Alexander, please welcome to the stage. Oh, very good. No problem. So come. A round of applause to Alexander. Very good, thank you.
1, 2, 1, 2. Hi, everybody. I'm Alexander Tomic. I'm the founder of Alea. Alea is a game aggregator. We started in 2012 as an operator. So basically, we build an internal aggregator that we use for ourselves before starting to selling out to the market. I started in this industry 20 years ago, and I don't know if some of you look young and some other less. If you've been there 20 years ago, we had microgaming casino, we had Playtech casino, and some very big operators, they had their own software, like Cryptologic was the software of Intercasino, and 888 had their own software. Basically, that was it. Then RTG came out, Top Game, that became pragmatic. And we had very few software providers, and these software providers were basically downloadable. You would download a casino, and it was no GGR. It was about profit, bet minus win. They were doing everything. You didn't have RGS, remote gaming system concept. Basically, you were downloading a casino, they were doing the payment, they were doing the games, they were doing everything, and everything was under one house. It was the time of the downloadable casino. And then came NetEnt, Boss Media and NetEnt. And they started changing the game, and we saw it in 2006, 2007. We launched our first casino in 2012. It was called Slots Million. And what we wanted to have is every single provider under the same roof. And my personal dream was to have on the home page Playtech and microgaming together next to each other. Because back in time, even as an individual, you could not have a microgaming casino in one company and be the UBO of another company with a Playtech casino. They would attack you. It was forbidden. And now, on my home page, I had a Playtech game and I had a microgaming game. And a Playtech game and a microgaming game. And I felt really excited about that. And it was some kind of new era for online casinos, and we saw all the Casumos, video slots, Leo Vegas first mobile casino in 2012, ourselves, Slots Million. We came out on the market with tens, then hundreds of software providers, thousands, and then 10,000s of games. And it changed completely the landscape of online gaming. To be honest, when I started in 2012 with Slots Million, we integrated two software providers. I'm just trying to remember on the top of my mind. It was NetEnt and Betsoft, okay? And then we came with other ones slowly. Would have I used an aggregator back in time? Definitely not. Why? They were eating latency, because they were relying on their own servers. Clouds didn't exist, so they were adding 1 to 2 seconds per spin. Imagine now if their servers goes down, all your operation goes down. And why would you do that? Because they will bring you, what, 2, 3, 4 software provider. That's not interesting. What happened is that now we have something like 250 software providers. I stopped counting around 20, 25,000 games. And you would say, do I need all these games? I mean, maybe I just need Pragmatic, I need Evolution here in Brazil. And that's a very interesting one. I need PGSoft, a Chinese game, which is making most of the traffic on Brazilian websites. And that's where I'm going. How could you have predicted that? How could you have predicted that Fortune Tiger, a game that was made for the Chinese market by a Chinese company, would be performing #1 in Brazil? Impossible. You can't predict that. And you can't predict if a movie is going to be a good movie. Even if you put 200 million and Tom Cruise and whoever, you're not sure it's going to be a good movie. You can't replicate. That's the beauty of every creation, is that you create something, it works, and then you create it after it doesn't work. Matrix, the first movie was amazing. Number 2, number 3 was shit, okay? So, do we need to try all these software providers? Yes and no. Do we need to try all the games? Yeah. I mean, the interesting part is that some software providers, they just have 1 or 2 games that are good. Let's take, again, PG Soft. We're looking at Fortune Target, Fortune OX, and maybe 1 or 2 other games. But basically, that's it. And that's also what's happening with other software providers. So I do need to integrate a lot of them. I didn't say all of them. Because they all have a certain amount of games that are working. So it becomes complicated now. If I have an operation, I need to deal all the commercials for 100 software providers. It depends how many regions I'm going to address. And I need to go to the KYB. So know your business. Are these guys legitimate? They're going to ask me for a setup fee, for a minimum fee. Then we need to do the integration. And that's the very tricky part I'm going to talk about, integrations. Let's leave it for later. If you want to launch an operation today, I don't see how you can do it without an aggregator. I would say I would use an aggregator if I was an operator myself. And then slowly, I would sign the big software provider. I would take my list from number 1 to number 100 and slowly sign them directly. That would be my first choice. I take the aggregator. The aggregator is, sorry to say, it's my bitch. I'll take them, they provide me my games, and then slowly I pass into direct contracts. And I'm saying that being an aggregator, okay? That's how it should be done. However, the aggregator can give you sometimes better price than if you go direct. But there is a very big issue. And the issue is about integration. So what we did as a software provider and as an aggregator at the beginning, we integrated all the software providers' APIs. And 10 years ago, Neton didn't have a good API. You know, Betsoft didn't have a good API. But there was no hackers around. Now there's a lot of hackers around, especially here in Brazil. I mean, you're a country where people get very creative with we're talking about stealing money. And there's people that need money, okay? And there's a lot of money in our industry, so they are very, very creative, okay? In bonus abuse, we see it in credit cards, and now we see it in hacking game API. So let me get back to my point. We integrated Neton 15 years ago. The API wasn't the most robust, but we didn't have an ecosystem of hackers challenging us every day. And we integrated the big ones, and what happened is that with years, they became more mature in building secure APIs. What's a secure API? Secure API has different calls for bets and for wins, has retries and rollbacks, and has reconciliation system after. I may be talking Chinese for most of you, but understand something. We should be at the level of the banking industry. For one reason, there's money in and there's money out, and we are the only industry where there's money out with the banking industry. We pay out our customers in the banking system. Acquiring system is called 7995 MCC transaction. That's why our industry is under very close scrutiny by AML authorities. There is money laundering in our industry because you can take money out. So if I take the API of Spotify and something goes wrong, and I want to listen to Rolling Stones, and API fucks up and gives me, I don't know, Taylor Swift. Wow, too bad. But if that problem happens in a gaming API, basically you have someone who virtually can print money. they are not placing bets and they are receiving wins. Okay? And that we see a lot. And they know how to do it. And then what they do, they don't withdraw the money because your fraud and payment team would see it very quickly. So what they do, they funnel it through other software provider, creating GGR and royalties that you will need to pay to other software provider. And then they withdraw the money maybe a couple of weeks after. So your team gets completely lost about what happened. Okay? If you're a crypto casino, it's going to be even more challenging to deal with because what they're going to do is just going to withdraw that money very fast. And it's the concept of a crypto casino. So what we were a couple of years ago, we were a Babel tower. And we were speaking 100 language, the 100 language of the software providers. Today, the game has changed. We stop teaching to software providers, we start, teaching software providers what is an API. They integrate our API. And if there's one advice I could give you as an operator, apart from working with us, is develop your own API. Develop your own API and force the software provider to use it. Because at the end of the day, the liability is on you. You are facing the player, and right behind the player, you have the regulator, okay? So you have a liability agreement with the software provider, and they say it's 10,000, it's 20,000, it's 100,000 liability if there's a misfunction in the API or in the software. But what if it's 1 million or 2 million? You have to pay it out of your pocket, okay? So what you need is to control the API. And it's very complex because API is an intangible product. If your developer fucks up on an API, you're not going to see it. It's not going to show on the front end. It's not going to show on the back end, okay? So it's a product that's very hard to see when there's a bug. You can have a silent bleeding. Your operation actually can bleed money without you knowing what's happening, okay? So we need to raise the standard and develop API governance where we show that our gaming API that are in the center of, in the core of our operations as effective, as reliable, as robust as banking API. And we're very, very far from that. And the reason is that we have a lot of new software providers coming on the market, and I don't want to blame them. I have only bad respect for them, and because they're our product, we take games from them, and they're good at building games, and they're focused at building games, and what they do is entertainment. They want to build good games. They want to become the new No Limit City, the new push gaming, you know? But they don't focus on the API. They don't really understand what's the API, and the API is the key, again. So instead of being a Babel tower that speak 100 different languages from 1 different software providers, now you need to become a teacher. You need to write the language and teach the language to them and force them to use your language, because basically you're speaking to a 5-year-old toddler. When we speak to software providers and we tell them, we're going to do the retry, we're going to do the rollback, we're going to do the reconciliation, that is how a gaming API works. No, we don't need to do that, it's okay, let's go live. We're not going to go live. We're not going to push the green button. Why? For us, it's okay. No, but it's not okay for us. It's not okay for our customer. We need to protect them. We need to protect you also, you know? So that's a very important point I would like to emphasize today, is that aggregator, back in time, we were just reseller. We didn't have a glorious mission in this industry. We were buying and reselling games and putting 2% on top of it. And then we became game specialists. Okay, we have all the data, because we have a lot of data from a lot of casinos, from a lot of different geos, so we know what works where. And we also segment the player. We do player segmentation. I don't need to know that the player is called John Smith. I just need to have his ID. And with this ID, I see which game he's playing. I see the bet to balance ratio. Okay, I see that lens session. I see if he's playing on mobile, on a desktop, which country, etc., etc. Okay, so we have a lot of data. We can help you define which are the games that are going to work the best for which typology of player. Okay, so we became game specialists. Now, the evolution of a game aggregator is to become APA specialists. And again, as I told you before, it's an intangible product. And there's one thing you don't want, and I can tell it from my own experience. When I had a casino and I had to integrate a new software provider, and I have my development team that they are sitting, and I have my rock stars and I have my rookies, okay? And I know that this is a very big game provider, so I'm gonna ask my rock star, could you please integrate that? If I would have tell him, go and clean the toilets, or get me a coffee, with exactly the same results. You ask a developer to leave the front end, to leave the back end, the cool stuff that he can associate his name with, and tell him to work in integrating an API, it's an insult. Okay, so they're going to do it, and they're going to do it one time. So next time another developer is going to do it. You don't keep the knowledge inside the company. It's dispersed. Okay, you don't have a core knowledge about that. The other thing is, as other companies do, it's a rite of passage. I don't know how to say it in English. A ritual for onboarding new developers. You take the rookie developer and you tell him, can you integrate me in this game provider? And it's a rookie developer, he doesn't have a clue. He's going to do it. You're not going to see the errors because it's not a front end, it's not a back end. Again, it's not going to pop up like the nose in front of your face. It's going to pop up when you're going to have a hack a couple of weeks, months, or years after. And maybe sometimes you're going to have this silent bleeding where you're not going to see the hack. That's a terrible situation, okay? Because basically, all your operation is flooded, all right? So what you need actually in our company, we have one person working on APIs. It's my co-founder, and she's the CPO, the Chief Product Officer of the company. Again, we put the best people on the APIs. And enough of self-promotion. If I'm here to give you something for free, is to tell you as operators, develop your own API, give it to the software providers, and force them to integrate your API. That's the most important thing. And I would say that if you are a software provider, spend time working on your API, or integrate the API of the operator, because it's his responsibility at the end of the day, and you don't want to have this responsibility. That would be my biggest advice. And now on the other side, as an aggregator, we do the boring stuff, you know, like Elon Musk's company. We integrate API every day, and it's like a surgeon. We repeat all the time the same boring stuff, you know? And we became very good at that. Repeating again and again, integrating these APIs, etc., etc. So another recommendation that I would give you is have a dedicated team for your APIs. Any question? Thank you very much.